welcome back to another U.S. immigration law video. Today we're going to be discussing a question that we often get from our Canadian clients about being in the United States on a visitor visa and whether or not, while in the United States on a visitor visa, they can convert over to a green card. Now, we often get this question from Canadians who are visiting the United States but are then either married to a U.S. citizen or after their visit to the United States, they get married to a U.S. citizen. And they want to know that while they're in the United States in this situation, is it possible for them to then switch from that visitor visa over to a green card? Now, there's a lot of confusion around this process and whether or not you're able to do it. And that's because a visitor visa is what is called a non-immigrant visa. Now, a visitor visa as a non-immigrant visa, your intention when you enter the United States should be temporary. You should not be entering the United States to seek permanent status or to reside permanently in the United States on a non-immigrant visa, such as the visitor visa. Now, the thing with immigration is it's intent-based. So your intent can change. And that intent issue is often confusing. Now, if you're entering the United States as a Canadian visitor, and for some reason your plans change after you enter the United States, maybe your circumstances change. Maybe you lost a job. Maybe you just can't stand being apart anymore. Maybe your situation is one that the travel back and forth just isn't feasible anymore. And you, in order to maintain your relationship, you've decided, you know what? We can't do this back and forth as visitors visiting each other in Canada and the US anymore. How do we make this permanent? Let's file some paperwork to keep me in the United States permanently. And that's often the question we get. And can you do that? The answer is yes. If it's done properly, a Canadian visitor to the United States, and this includes Canadians coming in as visa exempt or non-controlled Canadians that they might be referred to as to the United States, and you weren't necessarily issued a visa or an I-94 record of admission, and you're here visiting. If you are married to a U.S. citizen or get married to a U.S. citizen and you do the process correctly, there is a way by which you can convert from that visitor visa over to a green card, remain in the United States, and go through that immigration process without leaving the United States. And then you would immediately go from a visitor over to a green card. Now, there are complications with this process. This is absolutely a process I would not attempt to do on your own. There are weight requirements after entry to the United States as a visitor that you have to meet before you can file your paperwork or take certain steps in that immigration process. There are complications such as travel. If you're going through this process and you entered as a visitor, you're not going to be able to travel outside of the United States. So you're not going to be able to visit Canada for this period of time while you're going through what is called adjustment of status. And there will be a time period where you also won't be able to work in the United States, where you're going to have to wait until you get what is called work authorization. Well, that will then allow you to work for a large portion of the time you're waiting, but you can't work before you get that. So the simple answer to the question is yes, you can convert over from a visitor visa if you enter the United States as a Canadian visitor over to a green card that will allow you to remain in the United States on a permanent basis through marriage to a U.S. citizen. And that process is completely feasible, and we do it all the time. That's probably the most common way that a Canadian who is married to a U.S. citizen obtains a green card, is through entering as a visitor, then converting over to a green card through that marriage to a U.S. citizen. So if you're a Canadian, you enter the United States as a visitor, and you have questions about going from a visitor visa to a green card, give us a call. We handle these cases on a daily basis. This is something we do that we know very well, and we're able to assist you with. Thank you for watching another one of our videos, and have a great day.